Hello everyone, Dan Swift here, founder and CEO at Numentum, and welcome to the Speaker Series, where we spotlight some of the most interesting minds in the world of revenue generation. At Numentum, we help forward-thinking B2B organizations create better buyer experiences and deliver new momentum to their revenue engine. On this episode of the Speaker Series, we speak with Katie Mevis, Head of North America Growth Market at SAP. We have a great conversation around what it takes to get and keep talent, building a pipeline for female leaders, and why it's so important for leaders to carry the burden of the team. Katie, welcome to the Speaker Series.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Excited to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's jump straight in. Let's start with what you're doing right now. Now, I mentioned you run the high growth market team for North America at SAP. Can you share with our listeners just a little bit about the role itself? And also, what are you solving for your customers?
Sure, absolutely. So my team and I lead all of our high growth sellers in North America. The high growth team is focused on accelerating business outcomes and driving growth for our large enterprise customers that haven't traditionally done a ton of business with SAP. So we work with them to understand their business strategy, where they're headed, and how we can help accelerate that strategy.
Wonderful. Now, you've been with SAP for a decade, coming up to 2 years.
10 years.
I know. I saw your post on LinkedIn, actually. It's phenomenal. But I think it was LinkedIn, or maybe it was Facebook. But anywho, and in this particular role, I think 2 years, right? So as you look back,
Correct.
What are you most proud of, and what's next for Katie Mevis?
So I think what I'm most proud of is really developing a high performing and diverse team. I am really focused on making sure we set a strategy and a vision at the North America level that can be executed by every single person on the team. So making sure that the team is aligned. We've had tremendous success as an organization in just 2 years. And I couldn't be more excited about the future for this team and this organization.
Amazing. So we met back in 2019, I think it was, when SAP was rolling out Empire selling across SAP SuccessFactors. And at the time, if my memory serves me right, you were running the HXM sales team for strategic industries, but also the Northeast and the Midwest regions. Did I get that right?
I think at that time it was, yes, a little bit of all of that. So the Northeast and our regulated industry team, and then I transitioned to the Midwest while we were working together.
Got it. So when you look back, what do you feel your sales organizations took from the training? And if you could you just go into the results just a little bit for our listeners?
Absolutely. And I'll actually start with the results. We doubled our pipeline in the 12 months after your training. And I think there were a couple of key things. I think coming to our customers and speaking in their terms, in business outcomes, having that social dynamic, that passive selling that was happening kind of just naturally from a social perspective on LinkedIn, really made our teams much more approachable. The conversations were much more natural instead of picking up the phone and cold calling, which is what everybody used to do. Making it a more natural conversation, focused on a business outcome, focused on our clients instead of on, tactically what features and functions can SAP bring to the table. Really changed the dynamic and how our sellers were showing up. And the end result was that doubling in the amount of pipeline in 12 months. So it was a tremendous result. The other thing that we saw was our average sale price went up, again, doubled. Our average deal size doubled because we were having a value-based conversation instead of a tactical conversation.
Yeah, a lot of the people we were chatting with in the program, they were saying they were able to get to the people who actually make the decisions or the people that influence those decisions, rather than speaking with folks who are more readily accessible, right? But don't necessarily make those buying decisions, which I think probably accounts for kind of the results that you got, which is really cool. But and I want to take you a little bit to the fact that you've been running a sales organization during a global pandemic. It can't have been easy. So talk to us a little bit from a leadership perspective. What have been some of the challenges of working remotely while trying to lead this business?
Well, and I would add a brand new business for SAP. So I took this role in January of 2020, never expecting that 8 weeks later, literally the world would shut down. So I was working with folks that I've never met in person or had met in person very briefly, trying to build camaraderie, trying to build collaboration across all the different market units in North America was certainly a challenge, but we learned some things along the way. It forced us to figure out new ways to build teams, to connect people, to collaborate, and to drive engagement. So I found a couple of things that made a big difference. So regular cadences, those formal cadences that of course we all have, maintaining those cadences and that structure, but also the informal, the team meetings, the happy hours, the Friday afternoons, let's all get on Zoom, personalizing it. And it's always important to understand your team, but it's even more so in a virtual environment. What are their personal motivators? Taking the time to check in, to make sure people were okay, both on a professional level, but on a personal level, and really meeting them where they were, making sure they were taking time for themselves. It's very easy. I learned this a couple of weeks in. I was so tired and I couldn't figure out why. Well, it's because I was in front of the screen all day. And I realized I was used to having that little bit of downtime on a flight or in a hotel room at night. I wasn't getting anymore. So making sure to carve that out, and then making sure that the team was doing the same so that they could come to work with their whole self and be ready to go.
Yeah, it's been an interesting and challenging time, and as people start kind of making those moves back to the workplace, some companies seem to be going back in droves, and others maybe less so, more of a hybrid approach. What is it looking like, just out of curiosity for yourselves? Is it a bit of both?
It is a bit of both, and we're fortunate. SAP has really adopted a flexible work model, so it's about what works for you. I've had the opportunity to travel a bit recently, and it's about that comfort level of what's okay for me and my family, what's the right decision. Certainly, we have people coming into the office, and we have others that are making the decision that they'd prefer to stay home for the time being, and either is okay. I will tell you, I'm noticing that exhaustion now on the other side. Now that I'm getting back to travel, it's tiring. It takes a lot out of you, and I'm out of practice. Even packing takes a little more mental energy than it used to. Making sure you remember all those little things that you used to have just ready to go.
Yeah, my commute currently is from downstairs to upstairs. I actually took a commute into New York City from New Jersey, where I live, just to actually have that experience and just see people. And I actually found it quite energizing. Now, would I want to do it every day? No. I'm quite happy with where we are, but it was nice to kind of have that time to myself. I hear you. When I chat with heads of sales, one of the biggest pain points right now for them is hiring, and arguably it's a talent focused market. So how are you, or I should say, a candidate focused market? So how are you building your talent bench? How do you think about that?
So a couple things. We've really wanted to personalize that experience to have people understand what it would be like to join the team. So we've done a few things. We've got a high growth career site. So if you go to sap.com, our job site, we've got a high growth specific career site where I share a little bit of our vision and what we're trying to do. So making sure that we're very personalized in our approach, using some of the empire selling tools, making sure we're social. So sharing jobs, talking again about what it's like to work at SAP. I'm a huge networker, big believer in always networking, whether it's someone sitting next to me on a plane or waiting in the airport, spending time getting to know people, and then thinking creatively about the hiring profile. It's not just, let's pick, that technology salesperson coming from one of our competitors. Looking beyond that, looking at other B2B sellers, looking at other skill sets, because there are things that certainly are must-haves. People need to be able to sell. That's an inherent skill. So we can teach people the technology. So thinking about things differently and looking at different pools of candidates, I think benefits all of us, creates some diversity on the teams, and really brings in some fresh new perspectives.
So I want to bring you back to the diversity piece in a moment, because I know that's a passion of yours. But just staying on something you said in terms of the talent and the market and posting on LinkedIn, but it's also your profile, right? And your profile is phenomenal. There's two things that you say in your profile that I'd love to ask you about. The first one, you say, and I've got it right here, you're a mentor to early talent, helping them build careers and find rewarding opportunities that they are passionate about. So for our listeners, can you share a little bit about this passion for early talent and how it manifests itself in your day-to-day at SAP?
Sure. I think I stumbled into it a bit accidentally. The first team I led at SAP was largely made up of folks from our sales academy, which is we take people right out of college and grad school and teach them how to sell. Then we put them in the field with lots of support. And I had quite a few folks on my team that came out of that program. And I quickly understood that their development needs were very different than a seasoned salesperson. But I will tell you, there's nothing more exciting than having someone like that be successful and teaching them how to sell, watching them be successful, and then watching them go on to share that with others, which I've now gotten to enjoy. That really developed a passion for me in helping and supporting those folks, because the rewards are so tremendously huge when they're successful. Watching that, there's nothing more rewarding than knowing that you had a hand in someone's success. And so what that looks like on a day-to-day basis or weekly basis for me, I'm still very engaged with our early talent. I get reach outs all the time from folks that want to connect with me, and then I connect them with others who've been down that journey. So I spend quite a bit of time having those conversations, making sure that I help people really figure out what it is they're passionate about, what gets them up, excited to go to work every day and is going to make a difference for them personally, and then help them along that journey, whether that's me directly or connecting them with someone else that can help.
Amazing. I mean, it's testament to your leadership, and I want to take you down that path as well. So we're going to come back to diversity. We're going to come back to leadership. There's so many different topics. Just staying on your profile for a minute, the other big passion you have, and you say, and again, I've got it right here, you're a mum to 3 daughters, and that you're deeply invested in the workplace and creating opportunities for women in technology. Now, you know that one of my professional passions is elevating women in business. So we could do a whole speaker series on this particular topic with you. But what do you see and what do you do to create opportunities for women? Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Again, I think it comes back to being open to different backgrounds. I recently hired someone who has been very active in the military and doesn't necessarily have a technology background, but has the basic skills that we needed. And people that talked to her said she's just so capable. Like anything she's going to do, she's going to dig in, she's going to make it happen. So I think it's being open to non-traditional backgrounds, to non-traditional sources of talent, because people have so many skills that are transferable. When you have those basic building blocks of, grit and passion for learning, some of the other things we look for, those are so transferable from role to role. To really understanding beyond the details of this specific job, can this person bring something that is valuable to the team, that will elevate the entire team and bring something valuable to SAP? I think thinking about things differently, whether that's male, female, whatever that is, diversity comes in so many forms. I think it's very easy to get caught up in some of the traditional ways we think about diversity, but even educational background. I have a very different educational background I talk a bit about on LinkedIn. And I think it would be very easy for folks to dismiss people looking at a resume. So it's really important to have the conversation and understand who that person is and what drives them.
Yeah, so some of the most successful people I've ever worked with do not have a college degree, and some of them left school, earlier than others, and they have like you say, a completely different skill set, a different view of the world, and bring so much to the teams that that you're building. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Let me take you down a couple of different topics. I want to bring you to leadership. Now, in terms of leadership, how would you, I almost want to answer this for you, but how would you describe your leadership style? I know you quite well, and how is it developed over time?
It definitely has developed over time. I will say that when I got into it, you have to learn as you go. It's almost impossible to train to be a leader. You have to do it, and you have to look at those around you and learn from them. So my leadership style is very person focused. I really want to understand what it is that makes you tick, whether that's, having tremendous success, whether it's, financial metrics, whether it's, contributing to the organization. When you have that personal connection and understand what makes someone show up every day, I firmly believe that everyone shows up and does absolutely the best they can every day. But when you understand their motivation, it allows you to have a different conversation, to talk about, all right, this is working really well, but this is maybe something that we can help you grow and help you develop. When you understand the personal motivators for people, you really have a unique and a different conversation.
So is that why everyone loves working for Katie Mevis then? Because you get to know them. I mean, it's true, because so many people do speak so highly of you. You get to know them as human beings, right?
I think it's really important. And I think, the other thing is trust and transparency. Like, they have to trust that I have their best interest at heart. That may conflict with my best interest, but they have to be able to trust me and trust that I've got the bigger picture in mind when I'm helping guide and develop and grow. And I do think it's leadership. One of the things my team will talk about is, I hate the word boss. I'm your leader. I'm your manager. That's fine. I'm not your boss. We're all adults, and we need to be in a position where we have that trust and transparency, and we work as peers on a shared objective.
I love that. And you got a massive job, right? So with all of this responsibility and a lot of stress that comes with it, and we talked about it earlier, working from home, that brings another level of stress, and the pandemic, all of that. So how do you stay balanced? What are the tips? What are the tricks? What do you got?
Well, beyond my dog, who gets to come to work with me just about every day, keeps me calm.
Yep.
I think it's important to have a change of scenery. I'm talking to you today from a different place than I usually work. Change the scenery. Halfway through the pandemic, I took the opportunity to move into an office space with my husband that we share for his business. And I got my own office. I got to leave the house every day. That change of scenery is just so critically important. So mixing it up, taking time to disconnect. I take some time every morning to do some meditation and some reflection. I turn the phone off. That's focused time for myself. And then one of the things that I do personally that I was not good at prior to the pandemic, but I am now, is I have a really tight rein on my do not disturb hours on my phone, so that, if it rings at 9 o'clock at night, I'm not hearing it. There are select individuals that need to be able to get through to me, and that's fine. And there are times, certainly times of the year and times of the quarter, that doesn't work. But in general, structuring that time where the phone's not ringing and the emails aren't being looked at, it's really important. It's too easy to get sucked in 24/7.
I had a terrible habit at the start of the pandemic of literally sleeping with my phone next to my pillow, and waking up in the middle of the night and checking the time, and then going that extra step further. Just, did anyone message me on anything? That phone is not even in my room anymore. I don't trust myself to not look at it. But it is so important. You got to somehow compartmentalize, right, what's going on, which clearly you've managed to do. I want to take you to a topic linked to sales leadership, but sales and marketing. Now, there's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue in terms of how these two functions internally are aligned or not, as the case may be. What's your take on this much talked about topic?
And I think it goes beyond alignment. I mean, we really are the same team, and we need to operate that way. So, the creation of demand, the creation of interest, it's really tightly, not even aligned, it's connected to that sales arm. And so when we think of it that way and we approach it that way and act in that way, I think we have a differentiated outcome. Instead of this team and that team, it's all on this path or this trajectory. So how do we start with our brand and what that looks like? How does that feed into eventually what our sales teams are talking about with our customers? So that connection, I think, has to be really tight. They really need to operate as two sides of the same coin.
Katie, I've got to ask you this. You've been so successful over the years. You're so balanced, so human. There's got to have been some key influencers or influencing people on your career. So what's the best leadership advice that you've ever received?
That's a hard one, I'll be honest, because I've gotten some really great advice. But, I think ultimately, I had I would say, life-changing leadership development experience at West Point. Not career-changing. We all have those development opportunities that we say, that was unique, that stuck with me. But this event at West Point was absolutely life-changing. And they talked about being very clear on expectations, setting an expectation for the team, telling them what we need to accomplish and why we need to accomplish it, and then letting them figure out how. Because going back to that diversity, everyone's going to approach the how a little bit differently. And there's some magic there in understanding, all right, Dan, if we understand what and why, how are you going to approach it versus how is someone else going to approach it? So giving them the freedom to be diverse and to be themselves and tackle the problem uniquely and learn from each other, I think really has framed my leadership style, because there is no one answer, and there's greatness in looking at all those different paths to success and learning from them.
So there's got to be frustrations. There has to be frustrations. So what's a non-starter for you? Okay, if there's one thing that frustrates you most about business or life or people, what is that one thing?
A lack of integrity, period. All you have is your integrity, is your word, is your follow-through. If we don't have that as a basic building block, it's almost impossible to have a successful relationship.
So Katie, you've been a leader for a number of years. So there has to be some stories that just have stuck with you. Can you share with our listeners anything that comes to mind?
There is one that is really impactful, and I think about was just a physical demonstration of leadership. It's not often you see that. So again, we were at West Point, and we had the opportunity to do a morning workout, which, talk about intimidating, workout with 40 of your closest coworkers. So it's early in the morning, everyone's having coffee, a little blurry-eyed, and they come in and say, well, we have 20-pound vests, and we're going to ask 3 people to wear the vest and to carry the weight and the burden for the rest of the team. And there was a very visible disconnect between the people that quickly looked down or started looking around at each other and the 3 individuals that said, I'll do it. I will take the weight and the burden for the team. And that was a real physical demonstration of what leadership really is. It's taking on the weight and the responsibility for your team so that they can go on and do what they need to do. And we quiet the weight or limit the weight that we put on the team. And seeing that physical demonstration was really impactful to me. The folks that said, I'll take it, I'll do it. And so I think about that often, who steps up and who says, I'll take that on, I'll take that responsibility, I'll shoulder that weight for my team.
Have there been any, that's a great story, have there been any moments in your career where you've had a moment and you've had to sort of go, wait, did someone really just say that to me? Have there been any of those moments? Because you shared a few things over the years. Does anything jump to mind?
Certainly, I think there's lots of those moments in anyone's career, but one that stands out for me, I think it was intended as a negative, but I took it as very much a positive. Someone said to me, you lead very much like a woman or like a female. You have a female approach to leadership. Absolutely, I do. And there's strength in that, and that's a positive. And I think that should be viewed as a positive. We all lead differently. There's no one right way to lead. And so back to our conversation around diversity, I do tend to skew more traditionally female in my leadership approach. I'm more of a nurturer. I really get to understand the individual. And I think there's strength in that. Other people lead very differently, lead from a position of data or a position of very black and white. And that's okay as well. There's things to be learned from both. But to say you lead like a female or you lead like a woman and have that be a negative was a little surprising to me. And I thought, yes, I absolutely do. And I'm proud of that. So the ability to look at that as a positive.
Yeah, it's amazing what people say and why they think it's okay to say things like that. And then actually the way you look at it is absolutely right. I think candidly in right now, compassionate leadership, I don't think it's leading like a woman. I don't think it's leading like, I think it's being compassionate to another human being, based on the state of the world, right? Yeah.
And I think if we've learned anything during the pandemic, it's is that we need to be very person focused and less business focused. The business will follow, but the relationship is really what's important. You talked about my 10-year anniversary, which was just a couple of days ago. And I looked at the amount of people, it was on Facebook, and I tagged north of 60 people. And I thought about that, the relationships I've built in 10 years at SAP, to the point that I have 60 plus people on my Facebook. And I'm pretty selective about who I include in my personal social media. But that was a statement to me that it is really about those relationships. When you have those strong, trusting relationships, the business will follow.
So I always like to ask this. Do you have a favorite quote, Katie?
I do, and I actually have it tattooed on my wrist. It comes from a poem, and the poem is, "There is freedom waiting for you on the wings of the sky, and you ask yourself, what if I fall? But my darling, what if you fly?" And I think about that often when I'm looking at something. Should I take this leap? Should I do this? What if I fall? But the reality is, what if you succeed? What if you fly? I think we often think of the negative. We have to think of the positive. What if this is successful? Imagine if the impossible were possible. What if I fly? So I like that quote, and it stays with me every day.
And for our audience, so many people listening to this are salespeople, sales leaders. And for sellers, sometimes there's something that holds you back, right, from just going for it. So you heard it here. What if you fly? Beautiful.
Right. Just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? You won't succeed, but you'll learn something, and you'll have a valuable experience and a story that comes from that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. So if you're open to this, I would love to do a quick fire round with you. So there's some questions that I've prepared, completely random, just so you know. There's some strange topics, but some of them, depending on how you answer it, I might push a little bit further to go a little bit deeper. Others, just on to the next one. So you cool? Should we give it a go?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Question number one. Katie Mevis, who is your hero?
I don't think there's one person. I'll call back to that leadership development opportunity at West Point. I think seeing that, I always had an appreciation for those that run to the problem. Mr. Rogers talks about look for the helpers. And certainly that's our military, but seeing that up close and personal gave me a different level of appreciation for those folks. So whether it's the military, people that sacrifice their time, their family's time to protect us and our freedom. Certainly our first responders, again, people that run to the problem instead of running away from the problem. We're selling software, and I'd like to think we're making an impact on the world, but we're not, saving people's lives on a daily basis. We're not protecting the country. The folks that do that kind of work, I think, are really my heroes.
Amen. Love it. The best sales leader that you've ever partnered with?
That's a hard one. There's a lot. I've been very fortunate to have some great sales leaders, but I think to me, there's one consistent thing about those people that have made a difference in my career and have been the best people that I've partnered with, is that they have faith in my ability to execute. Some of them have taken a leap of faith and invested in me. I had one say to me, "I'm going to be on vacation for the next 2 weeks. You've got this. You're certainly welcome to call me, but I know that any decision you make will be the right decision, even if it's not the same decision I would make." That's so powerful. And it's something I've tried to emulate as well.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. Okay. Morning lark or night owl?
More morning. I love getting up, watching the sun rise. I also love watching the sun set, but then I might be heading off to sleep early after that.
This is a random one, by the way. What is your last Halloween costume?
So it was a very last minute spur of inspiration. My husband and I were a Bloody Mary and a beer chaser.
Do photos exist of this by any chance?
They do. I'll have to send you some.
Amazing. Love it. Okay, favorite city in the world, or if there's a city or country that you'd most like to visit. I kind of want to know both of those.
Okay, so favorite city that I miss just terribly, you brought it up earlier, is New York. I used to be fortunate enough to come about once a month. I love New York. Briefly considered living there in my 20s. Don't know that I'll ever live there, but I enjoy the energy and just the life of that city, and I miss it terribly. City I'd like to visit, I would say just Italy. I am just passionate about food, huge foodie, love wine. Spent some time in Milan a few years back and really enjoyed it, and would love to spend some more time in Italy.
Wonderful. Yeah, beautiful country. How many cups of coffee a day?
Working on number 3 right now, and I'm probably not done. So 4 or 5, maybe.
There it is. Who's the favorite manager you've ever had? And this is controversial, if you can name, and why?
I'll call back to that individual who said that to me about, I have faith that you'll make the right decision. He was absolutely, career changing for me, invested in me, and I got to watch him be a leader and learn in partnership with him. And I think that really changed my leadership style.
Love it. All right, last question for you, Katie. What would you tell your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to be patient. I think often, and I see this with some of the folks that I work with today, we're in a hurry for the next thing, and we don't take the time to enjoy the moment that we're in. We've had success, or we've done some things, and now we're looking for the next thing. But it's a journey, and you've got to enjoy the steps along the way. It's not about the end point, it's about the journey.
I love that. Katie Mevis, enjoy the journey. All right. Well, Katie, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Great call. Thanks, Dan.